Hello, everyone, and I am the Dead Man, and this is my review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 3, Episode 3. It starts off that um, Pike's girlfriend, Captain Baytel, is that her name? She's looking for, or she, even though the previous episode we thought she was cured of the Gorn. Apparently, she's not. There's still Gorn DNA in her, and it's still causing problems. So she collapses. They take her to sick bay, and basically, they have to find a flower that can, and it's on the edge of the Federation space between Klingons and the Federation. It's basically a no-fly zone, so they're not even supposed to go there. But there's like a research facility that Starfleet had there during the war, and they have to find this flower that they can use to synthesize like a cure or something. Uh, so basically it's a unsanctioned mission, and so they decide the Doctor and Pike are gonna go take a shuttle while the Enterprise waits out um, in orbit of the planet, and there's also a bunch of like asteroids and stuff in between the planet. So, and they put on like civilian clothes. They're not wearing their uniforms. It's not a mission. It's off the record. It's not sanctioned by Starfleet. They're not told to go there. Pike just does it. And there's nothing else going on at the time. So they get there, and there's like a Klingon communications beacon, and it tells them basically turn back or die, and that's the teaser. And the title of this episode is Shuttle to Kenfori. Now, I've never watched Train to Busan, so I didn't know that it was what it is. If I'd have known that, then that title kind of gives away the plot, basically. So, we'll just take a look at something real quick. And hey, it's Gavin Blackburn again and DJ Play Nice. Glad you could join the stream. So they go to the surface of this planet, and the Doctor is scanning, and he says, there's no fauna, it's all flora. So there's no life on this planet except for the plants. And as they're on their way to the research facility, because they didn't beam down, they have to hike a little ways. And there's a lot of things that they get right. I could not believe it, but they get a lot of things right in this episode. I can't tell you how exciting it was for me to watch it when I watched it. So they get on their way to the research facility, and they come across like a Klingon body, and it's like all skeletal. It's all skeleton, and it's been ripped open. The rib cage has been ripped open. And Pike's like, I thought you said there was no life here. Only like an animal could do something like this. And he's like, he doesn't have an answer for Pike, and and they, I think they have a conversation about the war for a little bit, and like it kind of harkens back to like, yeah, they have like a little bit of a conversation about the war and like the devastation that went on, and uh, the lives that were lost. And I'm just going off my notes because it's been almost a week since I saw the episode. I didn't watch it again. I meant to do all this on Sunday after my Red Hour show, but this is not going to be part of the Red Hour. This is just a straight up review. And I remember thinking, you know, the whole war kicked off because Burnham did something stupid and was insubordinate on Discovery, and she was punished for it. She was supposed to receive like a life sentence or maybe even death sentence. And then of course Lorca, who's from the mirror universe, pretending to be the regular universe Lorca, promotes her and brings her on board of the ship as, you know, a command, as a first and second in command. And I just think was, while I'm watching this episode, I was just thinking, how convoluted and stupid is that? She starts a war, and then, you know, and then if it's they eventually find out that it is Lorca from the mirror universe, so none of everything that he did would not be valid in the first fucking place. So it's just, how convoluted was it that they wanted her to be captain so bad? Like, just have her go up through the ranks, and, you know, I don't know. I'm not a writer, but I mean, it just sounds fucking stupid. But anyway, then they get to the facility, and they find the flower, and Mbenga doesn't want him to touch it, you know, so they put on gloves, and they put on like what looks like a bandana. So it's cloth masks. Maybe they're space cloth masks, but according, you know, I know this is not our future. I know this is totally different, but according to the current CDC guidelines, cloth masks are not effective, or not very effective at all for protection against diseases. Even though they said that it was during that thing that happened about 5 years ago and made us wear them, but they knew all along that they weren't, and we know that because there are emails that have been leaked since then. But let's not talk about that. Maybe they're just space cloth masks with special abilities. You know, it's the future, 200 years from now or whatever. You would think that they would have a better way to protect themselves. So there's a little nitpick for you. They pick up the flower, and they're about to be on their way when all of a sudden they hear like a something like running around. They hear like a clunk sound, and again Pike is like, what the hell, you know? And then on the ship there's like a minor EM flux, and they receive like neutrino emissions, and all of a sudden a Klingon war cruiser shows up. So that's what I was talking about earlier about the things that they get right. So EM flux and neutrino emissions. Those are classic terms that we heard in like TNG and all that stuff. So, like I said, they hear a noise, and then a ship blows up. A shuttle, the Klingon shuttle, comes down, and it looks like the ornithopters from Dune, the new Dune. That's what it looks like. And I asked, apparently they were in Discovery. I don't remember them, but I've seen other people talk about this episode, and they say it's in Discovery, so I'll take their word for it. And it blows up their shuttle, so they're stranded there. They're screwed, and so some Klingons show up, and it's a female Klingon leading a group of like 2 or 3 other Klingons, and they show up and kind of start blasting, and they're trying to get away from them. And leading up to this point, they also found another like a skeleton, like a foot or something. So the doctors like scanning it, and basically they figure out that the way the scan comes out is they are not alive, but they're living. And Pike says it kind of sounds like the Z word, and I thought it was a good joke. Okay, so in the last stream, I just sat there and complained about forced jokes and stuff on Strange New Worlds, and how past Star Trek would just sprinkle in jokes here and there. Okay, now I'm giving them credit because they finally figured some things out, and this is not a forced joke. It was a sprinkled in joke that was funny, and they do it like 2 times where, and Bing is like, don't call him that, and Pike again is like, that really starts to sound like the Z word. So at this point, they figure out that they're zombies. So during this shootout with the Klingons, Pike, before they start firing, Pike tells them to turn it on stun. I don't think one time in Discovery they ever said that, turn it on stun. They just start blasting, and okay. And then the other thing is, they don't have like laser beam phasers. They still have like these bolts, kind of like an Enterprise. I guess you could dismiss that and say, okay, this is still not TOS time, so maybe later on they get the proper phasers. So on the ship, Pike's girlfriend is in pain, and Chapel is there, and she can't do much to help him. Then Spock says, we can, there's a Vulcan technique, a meditation technique for pain, but it requires me to do a mind meld. And she agrees to it, and so they do a mind meld, and he says, my mind to your mind, my thoughts to your thoughts, and then says something else. I don't remember what it was, but like my pain to your pain, or something along those lines. And she's you can kind of see, I guess they're showing us what they see in each other's mind. We've seen the inside of a mind meld before, but this one was different and a little more interesting. And Spock sees like a Gorn, and she sees it too, and then he kind of like screams out in pain. But it's justifiable because this is a mind meld. It's not like, oh, Spock is younger now, so he has emotions, you know. I'm telling you, when Ethan Peck is playing Spock straight up and not playing like goofy shit, he's getting better at like Nimoy's like mannerisms and his tone and the way, you know, he played Spock. He's playing a better, not a better version of Spock than Nimoy, but like he's getting better at playing Spock, actual Spock, when they're not having him do goofy shit. So, and then there's like an intern, and then the intern tries to intervene, and Spock like pushes him back accidentally. Like he's not trying to be violent. He's just accidentally, because he's kind of struggling with the mind meld. So then he's called to the ready room because they're having a meeting and they're trying to figure out how, because at this point they know that the communication's down, the shuttle's been blown to bits, and they were supposed to meet at a rendezvous point by now, and they haven't checked in. So they know that something's up. So they're called into the ready room. Una is in charge. You know, number one is in charge. There's Ortega, Spock, and I think, and Scotty shows up. And, which I like this Scotty. Some people don't. I'm fine with it. Is it better than Simon Pegg? I don't know. It's kind of hard to compare the two, but you know. So Spock suggests they take a slow approach because of all these asteroids that are in front of the planet that are kind of blocking them. They take a slow approach, and within 6 hours they'll be within range to beam them up. And Ortega kind of like interrupts, or you know, it's not her time to speak, and says, "I don't like that idea. You know, I'm not cool with that." It's like nobody fucking asked you in the first fucking place if you're cool with it. And this happens a lot in Strange New Worlds where people are kind of disobedient, and it got ignored for a long time, and I think enough people spoke up about it because she finally gets disciplined in this episode. She wants to warp into the atmosphere, which is dangerous, and so there's another one they got right. They got that right finally. In Star Trek, it's not only it's dangerous to warp in a atmosphere, but it's also dangerous to warp within your own solar system, because like that goes way back, and it's even talked about in various episodes, because something could go wrong, and then next thing you know, you come out of warp and you're like about to crash land into Mars or something, you know, or you could just destroy, like you're creating a warp bubble in the atmosphere or in the solar system, which could completely destroy, you know, the solar system or a planet or whatever, Earth, whatever. Now, yes, they do it in First Contact, but that's the first warp flight. So Una is like, no, I don't think that's a good plan. It's too dangerous. We'll stick with Spock's plan. Which, good on her. You know, another good thing that they got right. So back on the research facility, the zombies are can't read my own fucking handwriting. The comms are on. They figure out the comms are on the roof. Um, and basically they figure out that there's like this. The researchers were using hybrid moss for something during the war, and that moss is very aggressive. So, and it reminded me of The Last of Us. So, like the mushroom spores turn you into zombies, this moss turn you into zombies. And I don't have a problem with like them. You know, some people would say that's they're ripping them off. Well, you know, how many variation of zombie stories are there? You know, I mean, like that's fine. You know, this is, you know, however you want to make the zombie turn into a zombie. You know, it could be a virus. It could be, you know, any number of things. So that's fine. That's their own idea. It's not a rip off. I mean, this has been going around for how long now? I mean, even in like Haiti, they have their own mythos about zombies. So they plan. So basically, Pike and Mbinga get into an argument because he lets it out of the bag that so he's like, what were they doing with this hybridization project? And he's like, well, that's the plan for Batel, Captain Batel. Marie's her name. That's it. And he's all pissed off because they didn't discuss the plan with him, and they're like, well, if you would have said no to the plan, and they're gonna basically hybridize her with the Gorn blood. And some have speculated that that's how, because these Gorn look like xenomorphs. They look more lizardy than the Gorn in TOS, so that's how they look more humanoid. I don't know if that's, as the drinker would say, doop no. I don't know if that's the actual what they're going with, but that would make more sense. So he's like, you know, Mbing is like, well, she chose to not tell you because she knew that this would be your reaction, and he's just kind of pissed off about it. And then as that conversation is sort of wraps up, the zombies burst in and the Klingons rescue them. And she's like, you know, come with me if you want to leave. And then one of the Klingons get attacked and turned into a zombie, and she just fucking shoots him right away. And she doesn't do like the scream, like ah, like the death scream or whatever. Which, whatever. I mean, that's not like a big problem for me. So they get up to the roof, and the zombies are chasing them, and basically the people before had created like a force field, so they could use that communications device while the zombies, to stop the zombies, and you know, and they can get rescued. Or at least I presume that that's why they built that force field, to block the zombies while they can use the communication device. And she stabs Pike in the leg, because he's trying to say, hey, we could work together to get the fuck out of here, because her shuttle's right there. And she's like, I don't want to talk to you, I want to talk to you, and points to Mbinga. And so in the previous season, Mbinga killed, there was like a if you don't watch this season, there was a Klingon ambassador that was going to discuss peace process, or who helped bring around peace process for the Federation and the Klingons. And she's the daughter of that Klingon, which I figured as soon as she kind of pushed Pike to the side, it kind of clicked as they were saying it. I was like, oh, she's the daughter, and she's out for revenge. But then I was wrong. She's not out for revenge. Her house has been dishonored because she, he made peace with the Federation, and I guess some of the higher up Klingons didn't like that decision. So she has to kill Mbinga to gain her honor back. That's the only way. And she also explains that she had been tracking him and finally tracked him down to this location. Put something in his drink, or somebody put something in his drink or something that had like a tracking device. So at least they made sense of that. It wasn't just like hanging out there dangling. So back on the ship, they're taking the slow approach, and they get past the Klingon ship, and they slow down to 1/8 impulse. And then the Klingon ship spots them, and so they're like, now they got to kind of speed things up. So back on the planet, the Klingons raise shields, and then Una calls for evasive maneuvers. So back on the planet, she like grabs Mbinga and like has a knife to his throat, and because Mbinga's, the question is, did Mbinga, Pike thinks that Pike was told by Mbinga that it was self-defense that he killed this guy, but really he just straight up murdered him, because this guy was like a big he was bad dude, as Biden would say, during the war. He would like go out of his way to kill people. Bad hombre. So she wants to get down to the truth, and then so Mbinga says, "Yeah, I murdered him. It wasn't self-defense," and so they want to basically have this combat where I think she like ties his hand and she ties her hand, and they're kind of tied together with the non-dominant hand, and they both have like knives, and they're fighting and stuff, and during the fight a portion of the force field is damaged with the knife, and at that time the Enterprise enters the atmosphere. They go with Ortega's plan to kind of warp, or go in there, beam them out, and warp out of the atmosphere. So while they're fighting, Pike fixes the force field as best as he can, but it's still kind of breaking up and stuff, and the zombies are throughout the fight, you see like the zombies are like hitting the force field. So they maintain that. I thought for a second that they were just gonna like uh, just have them just kind of. No, they're constantly hitting the force field. So uh, Mbinga like overtakes the Klingon chick and um, decides to let her live, and she's all pissed off about that because that's like her life. Her house is. It's basically, if you don't get this done, you're gonna be killed. Like you're dead. You're dead, woman walking. If you don't restore your honor. So this is like your one chance. So realizing that she's dead anyway, she decides to sacrifice herself. And Mbinga, Pike's like, "What's she doing?" Mbinga's like, "Well, she's sacrificing herself and giving herself an honorable death so she can go to Stovacor." So again, there's another one of those details that they get right. It's like, okay, fine. So somebody on the writing team has done their homework, gone back and watched old episodes, or at least did some sort of research. Um, that sounds legitimate to me. Okay, she's having an honorable death by sacrificing herself so they can leave. So they get beamed up and they warp out of there. And Mbinga's like talking to Pike, and he's like, uh, as a captain, what do you think you should do now? Should you report me? Because I straight up murdered this guy. And he's like, maybe, but as your friend, uh, I understand, and he's like, you're not a bad person, and that goes back to the Red Hour episode that I just did, where it's, the balance between captain and friend. And I've had a job where I had to be a manager, and that balance it's not always easy because especially when it's close quarters and there's a small group of people, maybe 10, and you're all working together, and on your when there's downtime, you're chit chatting, you're talking. You may be talking about whatever, life in general. And you may tell jokes to each other and stuff like that. But then there's times where you got to be serious, and sometimes people might not take you seriously, and that's when you sort of have to put your foot down and say, and there's been episodes like that where, Cisco's like, this is not a democracy, I'm the one calling the shots, basically shut the fuck up and do what I say, but he's not saying that. He's not trying to be mean, but he's like, hey, let's restore order here a little bit. But he ultimately lets him off the hook, and he's like, because this mission was not official, and you had a knife to your throat, you could even say that, you just said what you had to say to satisfy this Klingon. And then Una calls Ortega's in to the ready room, and basically disciplines her, which again, they got something right finally after all these times I've been saying, there's no discipline on this ship. Pike is like too friendly with the crew, but Una basically like, you forced my hand. You wanted me to switch the plan to your plan, and that's not right. You put the crew and the ship in danger. And she's like, oh, I understand, and they she takes her off the duty roster and has to do like some kind of training. I forget what they said. And then Pike goes to Marie, and he's mad how she didn't tell him about the plan to do the hybridization and stuff, and basically the same conversation is like, well, you would have tried to do something else, and there is no other option. Basically there is no other option. This is the option. We try to do this, and if that doesn't work, it's over. So he comforts her, and he's okay. He cries a little bit, but he's hugging her and he's comforting her. He's acting manly, and I don't have a problem with that. I think if I was married and my wife was like dying of cancer, and she was scared, I think I'd probably shed a tear or two myself. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing unmanly about that. People complain about Pike being emasculated or something, but no. In this episode and the first episode, he was in charge of the ship, and he was, doing commands and asking for options, and turning down certain options, and so he's not emasculated in this episode. So I thought it was an 8 out of 10. It's a straight up monster of the week. There's no woke bullshit. It was just a straight story, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate them getting the details right of like the terms and how things function on the ship. They even show like Scotty targeting them for transport. They show, you don't really get to see things like that often. Like, the view scope thing. There's only been one time, and that was in Enterprise, where they show what T'Pol was seeing in the view scope, and I appreciate little details like that, which that makes the number go up. Okay, you've got a basic story, zombies. It's been done before. It was done in Enterprise. I thought this one was better than that Enterprise one. Yeah, some people say the Enterprise one was more tense. Like, I don't really care. That wasn't the focus of the story in this. The focus of the story was the struggle between Pike and him understanding M'Benga's motivations, and them duking it out. They don't physically fight, but they argue. And M'Benga's like, you don't get to make this choice. It was her choice. I agreed with it because it's the only option. There is no other option. And they kind of soften their voices, and the zombies are just a secondary thing. In that Enterprise episode, that the focus of the episode was zombies. So I appreciate that. They're not preaching at you. They're not anything like that. It's just a straight up Star Trek episode. And I know there's people out there that'll say this is not Star Trek. Well, it is. Okay, sorry. It has the name on it. What do you want me to call it? Fake Trek? I guess you could do that, but I have to give credit where credit's due. I'm sorry. If they do something right, I'm going to call them out. I'm going to say that they did this right. I know there's a lot of people out there that refuse to watch this show, and that's fine. but I don't think you can really say something about a show that you don't watch. I mean, you can. It's a free country, but Gavin Blackburn says the previously on spoiled some of the plot. Straight away, we see the Klingons who was murdered last year, and they're yeah, they did. I noticed that too. Maybe skip the previously on. They don't have to always do that. They used to do that when it was between seasons, but maybe because it's been so long between seasons that they feel like they need to do that. We don't need the previously ons. We aren't that stupid. Yeah, I just think it's more like because they had the writer's strike and stuff, people forget. I didn't really forget, but yeah, it does kind of give it away. They're laughing at the superior intellect. Who's laughing at the superior intellect? Anyway, so that's about it for me. Thanks for stopping by, Gavin Blackburn. Once again, DJ Play Nice. Anybody that's lurking, thank you, and I will see you. I will be back for the Red Hour on Sunday. I'm gonna watch Strange New Worlds this week's episode tomorrow and try to get a review out there probably on Sunday as well, and then my Fantastic Four review. Who fucking knows? Like, it's a lot to do. It's a lot to keep up with. Maybe on Saturday. I don't know. Maybe Saturday. It won't be at the same time. It'll be like Saturday afternoon, maybe around 4 or 5. I don't know. But anyway,